Good afternoon. My name is Sean Moore from Calcutt. We're going to be talking today about building community coalitions for substance use prevention. Our hosts, Jerria Martin and Don Blackmon, are both great prevention leaders with a lot of experience building coalitions from scratch and helping others do the same. Don, could you go ahead and advance that slide? So we're here today on behalf of the Opioid Response Network. SAMHSA released a grant called the State Targeted Response Technical Assistance Grant, which has sort of given us the footing to create the Opioid Response Network. And it's created here to serve both the STR grantees, those are the state drug use and mental health bodies, but as well, we're working with individuals, other organizations, really anyone in your community, and are here to provide resources and technical assistance to you. Don, could you go ahead and advance? So the Opioid Response Network does provide local training. We have a team of consultants in prevention, a team of consultants in treatment and recovery, all led by local addiction technology transfer centers consultant who is really experienced in the technology transfer element. So we're working on sort of like an implementation science model to bring the best evidence-based practices in opioid use prevention, treatment, and recovery to anyone who's requesting that. So we're a 100% request-based platform. So please let us know if there's anything that we can provide in terms of education or training for your community and your organization. Could we advance? The contact information for that, opioidresponsenetwork.org, orn@AAAP.org, and of course, AAAP's phone number. We really have people here all the time. Anytime you need assistance, that's a great number to have on hand. Reach out and we'll figure out how it is that we can best help you. We have 27 partner organizations working on the project. There's so much expertise, and it's very localized, yet very interdisciplinary as well. And advance. So funding for this initiative is made possible by SAMHSA. However, the views expressed in this webinar are those of my own and Jerria and Don. It does not necessarily reflect the views of the US government or the Department of Health and Human Services. So again, my name is Sean Moore. I am the Special Projects and Initiatives Manager at Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America. You could go ahead and advance, Don. For the webinar today, please don't use the raise your hand function. We won't be taking questions in the middle of the webinar, but there is a Q&A box that you should see at the bottom of your screen, depending on the version of Zoom software that you're using. So please do make the best use of that Q&A function. We'll return to questions towards the end. And if you'd like to send a message to the other attendees, you should be able to do that through the chat function. Though please do note that you are by default muted in Zoom. Advance. Again, we will be taking those questions at the end. I will be sending out also a PDF of the presentation for everybody who is on the webinar today. I'll also be sending a registration link for our next upcoming webinar, which will be the Friday after this Friday. There's my email. If you have any questions, concerns, or would like information on anything, please just let me know. And advance. So leading the webinar today, we have Don Blackmon. Don is the Region 3 capacity coach. So she is oversees technical assistance throughout the state of South Carolina, Region 3. She works for the South Carolina Department of Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse Services for in Region 3. In this role, she provides mentoring and oversight to the prevention efforts in the 10-county PD region of the state. She provides guidance and technical assistance in the strategic prevention framework process with a focus on strategic planning, community advocacy and readiness, needs assessment, capacity building, data collection, and performance assessment. She also provides a great deal of experience and expertise as a presenter on topics such as grant writing, ethics, environmental strategies, reporting, and documentation. Before her appointment as the regional capacity coach, she served as the coordinator of the 12th Judicial Circuit Alcohol Enforcement Team, the Florence County Coalition for Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse Prevention, the Drug-Free Community Support Program for Johnsonville and Pamplico area of Florence County, and the South Carolina Highway Safety Grant and the Community Trials Project for Prevention Research Center. Mrs. Blackmon has over 24 years experience of substance use disorder prevention, and she's a certified senior prevention specialist. She is also a certified trainer of the substance abuse prevention skills training, prevention ethics, passive alcohol sensors, and the Palmetto Retailers Education Program. She has served as a presenter and a trainer for the official Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Program in Washington, D.C., and has presented at numerous national and state conferences. She's a graduate of Francis Marion University with a bachelor's in business administration and resides in Florence, South Carolina. We also have Jerria Martin, who serves as the executive director of the Drug-Free Communities of Dallas County and a substance abuse prevention consultant headquartered in historic Selma, Alabama. As a licensed and ordained minister, her vision, strategies, and communication skills have helped influence public policies with programs that reach out across the cultural divide. With a bachelor's degree in English from Stillman College and a Master of Divinity degree from Princeton, Jerria has preached and presented nationally and internationally, working with a host of world-renowned leaders. Jerria currently serves as the president of the Rotary Club in Selma and the vice president of leadership in Selma. And in 2017, she was elected as an honoree of Birmingham Magazine's 30 Women Who Shape Alabama, and in 2016 as a top 20 under 30 honoree. In 2018, Jerria was named as the National TIAA Difference Maker, securing a $10,000 award for her coalition. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to you Dawn Blackmon.
Thank you very much, Sean. And I greatly appreciate this opportunity to be a part of this work. And I appreciate the work that Jerria and I have done, and I appreciate her helping with this. So really, I'm not as old as that bio makes me sound. I started really young, but I did start my work early in prevention, working with coalitions and understanding that the work of prevention is very difficult to do without a true grassroots community coalition, because they are members and represent the communities that we try to work with. So it's really, really important in the field of prevention that we do have coalitions. And we use that word coalitions a great deal, but what really is a coalition? A coalition is a union of people and organizations working to influence outcomes on a specific problem. There's a couple of key words in that definition that I want you to focus on a little bit. It is a group of people, but it's also key organizations in your community. And one of the big words I want you to focus on is outcomes. A coalition really should be about effective outcomes. Oftentimes coalitions become places that we just share information, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if a true grassroots community coalition is working on problems in their community, they really have to know what their expected outcomes are going to be. So when we talk about that, how do coalitions work? Coalitions work by creating alliances. This enlarges our base of support, our networks, and our connections. Therefore, we have a much wider reach within the community. Also, coalitions work by advocacy. Coalitions can be a safe place for advocacy efforts and protection for members who may want to advocate, but they can't do it alone. So as a whole, as a coalition, that advocacy base becomes very important. Also, coalitions give us a way to concentrate our focus. Multiple people and organizations can concentrate on a specific problem within the community. Therefore, we have more voices and efforts focused on this problem. Also, coalitions are a really good community, a community strategy because of the coordination of services. And hopefully this minimizes duplication of services. We can come together and utilize our resources better and more effectively and do more with our financial resource by avoiding that duplication of efforts. We really are better stewards of our money if we're not duplicating services throughout our community. Also, environmental and policy change. This is a big one that our coalition that I worked with for so long, we were very focused on environmental and policy change. And an individual or a small group may have, may be able to implement program type strategies, but it is very difficult to implement environmental strategies and policy changes if we don't have an organized, effective coalition. Also, coalitions can kind of wrangle some political clout, where coalitions can enhance the credibility and influence of members to campaign again for these specific changes collectively. There is a component of community education, obviously, with coalitions. We do want to educate them. Sometimes we become a little bit of salesmen and marketing for the true problem in our community, and how do we provide our community solutions to those problems. Sometimes, particularly in substance abuse, the community doesn't understand how many community problems are connected to substance abuse. And sometimes we have to educate the community on that. Also, coalitions, again, going back to not duplicating efforts and coordinating services, we can pool resources, and this magnifies our existing financial and human resources for a diverse range of people and organizations, which this in turn creates larger capacity for coalitions to actually do the work in the community. And of course, last but not least, we do share information amongst coalitions. We share information, skills, experience, materials, opportunities for collaboration with all of these organizations that we hopefully have at the table. Coalitions are invaluable in advocacy because they create structures for organizations and individuals to share ownership of common goals. I can't stress to you enough the importance of a coalition in order to advocate for a significant community change. Sometimes as individuals advocating for this change, the voice is small and may seem biased. But if you have a collective group of people and a collective group of organizations that are working towards this change, they can advocate much better, advocate much better for this long-term change. Long-term permanent social change to the environment for where our community members work and live. So we really have the best outcomes that way. Not gonna lie to you, starting a coalition sometimes can be very challenging, and we can face some barriers to the coalition. There can be many barriers, but don't let these barriers hinder you. They definitely are things that can be worked through. And sometimes you have to start small and continue to network and build these relationships in order to establish a strong community coalition. A few of the barriers that you may run into: turf issues are often barriers that we may see. You heard my background was a great deal working with the 12th Judicial Alcohol Enforcement Team, and I dealt with that a tremendous amount. They were a task force under our coalition, but turf issues were huge for enforcement agencies, especially trying to do multi-jurisdictional work. Those were some of the barriers that we really had to work through and work out before that alcohol enforcement team became effective, but we did do that. and those multi-jurisdictional efforts had tremendous impact. Sometimes you may have bad history in a community. There may be a history that a coalition wasn't managed well, or that there was mismanagement of funds in some way, or there may just be relationships that were destroyed in a previous coalition effort that you may just have to work through and build those relationships back up. You also may have certain groups that try to dominate the coalition and dominate the agenda of the coalition. So those are things that you have to watch out for. Often larger organizations seem to have the biggest voice at the table, and they may try to dominate the work and the process that goes on. Poor links to the community. It's really great to have a lot of big names at the table, but you must have your link to that community that you're trying to work with. Particularly, like I said, an area of the community that you are targeting, you must have links and you must have representation from that community on your coalition for it to be effective. There may be minimal organizational capacity. Your organization or other organizations at the table trying to start to put together a coalition, if they don't have strong internal capacity, it may be difficult to influence others to be a part of this coalition. Funding, coalitions are not and should not be about funding. I know that, but we all know that funding definitely helps. So that could be a barrier to starting and getting things rolling. Also, creating leadership within the coalition. If we don't create effective leadership, and you will hear me talk about leadership a great deal throughout this process, if we don't develop some type of leadership team, it will be a hard challenge, a difficult time and a hard challenge to create this coalition. As an individual, we may struggle to establish an effective coalition, but if we have leadership to help us support that, it really helps and goes a long way. Also, the perceived cost of working together. Is it worth it to them to be at the table? And Jerria is going to talk about this a little bit more when she goes into some details about her coalition, about how to work with them and make sure they understand what's in it for them. So how do coalitions work, fit in our prevention work? Coalitions themselves are not a prevention strategy per se. As preventionists, we talk about our work a great deal. And again, coalitions are not a real strategy that we're implementing, but they are the vessel by which we develop these strategies and develop solutions to problems, and how we effectively implement these strategies for more positive and effective outcomes. So coalitions do this by helping a community organize, plan, and deliver multi-level and multifaceted prevention programs, policies, and strategies. All right, so when we talk about a coalition, what are some of the nuts and bolts? What are some of the components of an effective coalition that we definitely need to see for them to have positive outcomes? One of the first things we talk about is a mission and vision. These are critical to be developed early so that the coalition and the membership knows where they're going and what their purpose is. I'm not going to get too deep into details about that because Jerria, again, in a part of her presentation, is going to talk a little bit about mission and vision for her coalition. But again, I can't stress enough that it needs to be developed early on, and it needs to have a constant presence within the coalition work that they do. Next, organizational structure and development. To be an effective coalition, there needs to be a very clear organizational structure. A strong and stable organizational structure creates strong linkages established with community organizations, not just individuals. You don't want your relationship with an organization to hinge on one relationship with a single person. Granted, that's how we start. We generally start with one individual and we work and build that relationship with them. But as you're developing your coalition, you really want to take that a step further and make sure that you've developed that relationship with the organization, not just the individual. You want to have a memorandum of understanding that the organization serves as a key, that the organization, not the individual, serves as a key part of the coalition. Again, going back with my law enforcement and alcohol enforcement task force, we really worked in the beginning to make sure that it was understood that if an individual was promoted or moved, that the membership didn't hinge on that individual person, that it was understood that the Florence Police Department or the Florence County Sheriff's Office would then appoint someone else to serve as a part of our task force and appoint someone else in administration to serve on our overall coalition. It wasn't about the individual names on the coalition membership. It was about the organizations within our membership. So, and clearly defined roles are really, really important in a coalition. This helps create membership satisfaction. Members need to know what is expected of them. They need to know why they're at the table. They need to know what we want from them, because a lot of times they come to the table and they're not really sure what their role is or what we're asking them to do. They need to understand what it means to be a part of a coalition. What does it mean to be a part of the leadership of the coalition? If you choose to be an officer, is that clearly defined? And if there's a lead organization for a coalition, I know often we have lead organizations that our funding is funneled through and that manage our funding. If they're considered, quote, the lead organization, there needs to be a clear understanding of what their role is and how they fit within the coalition. Also, having a formalized set of structures and practices is really key, such as bylaws. These should be developed early on in the coalition process, because what this does, it creates much better communication, it creates much better leadership, and it creates there's less potential for conflict. What should these bylaws include? How is coalition work done? Particularly how decisions are made, how conflicts are handled, and how the leadership of the coalition works. All of these create a very positive work climate and help create a clear decision-making process, which again, I stress, creates less potential for conflict and misunderstanding. Coalitions may be easy to initiate, but sometimes you have great difficulty being effective because the coalition may not have the capacity to obtain their goals. And by capacity for the coalition membership, I mean, they may not have the knowledge, they may not have the skills, we may not have the resources. Along with creating effective organizational structure, the organization's capacity to plan, manage, and implement prevention programs and policies is essential. Making sure that we're building the capacity of our membership to understand that we use a planning process and what is that planning process. Understand and build their capacity to become part of the leadership in the coalition, therefore in turn becoming leaders in our communities. And in order to build this capacity for coalitions and coalition membership, there must be continued professional development, not just for staff of the coalition, but membership of the coalition. Professional development is very important. Referring back to a few of the things that I've mentioned, do members really understand the focus of our coalition? Do they understand substance abuse? Some of them come to the table and they don't really understand some basics about substance abuse. So it would be important for them to have a basic understanding of that. Again, Do they understand how to use a planning process, and that we are working towards effective, positive outcomes? All of this is not valuable just for the coalition, for the members to be at the coalition with this, but they can use this in their professional lives too, which sometimes has been a big selling point for coalition members, that they do get to understand a planning process that they can actually implement in other things that they do. Community readiness. There must be a level of community readiness in order to effectively put together a coalition, just as there should be a level of community readiness to address a specific issue or problem. Is now the right time for a coalition in our community? If you have started to develop a coalition and you've started to organize one, what's the level of community readiness to focus and change the problems that you as a coalition membership intend to work on? So I know as a part of the SPIF planning process, we talk about community readiness a lot. So you need to think about that, assessing your community readiness. Now, staffing for coalitions. No, all coalitions don't have to have paid staff. It's not required. But adequate staff and time support really are necessary for an effective coalition to develop, plan, and implement strategies. Grassroots coalitions, again, may not have paid staff, but it is important to have someone that somewhat leads and orchestrates this process. You don't have to play every instrument in the orchestra, but you definitely can be the leader and orchestrating, hopefully, this great process that we work as a coalition. A coalition is much more effective if we have some form of staff to support and to keep the wheels turning. Particularly in the beginning, it's critical to have staff that are able to work this process. Communication. A clearly defined communication process is very, very critical. Solid, high quality communication can be key to whether a coalition really makes it or not. Often coalitions fail simply due to lack of communication or a miscommunication. When I say high quality, I don't necessarily mean high tech communication. The quality of communication to your membership is what is key. They need to stay informed, they need to feel valued, and they need to feel like they're a part of this effort. So that should be developed very early on as a part of your bylaws and your planning process, is how are you going to effectively communicate consistent messages to your coalition. All right, you've heard me mention leadership a number of times, and I think this is a very critical part. That's why I've mentioned it so often. It really is so important. I mentioned just a few minutes ago, a staff person alone cannot do all of this work. They must have someone, they can orchestrate this process, but they must have a leadership team to help them carry it out. It's great to identify some leaders early on who would be willing to take the lead and understand our planning process and understand what needs to be done in the community and how it needs to be done, so that they can help lead the coalition as a part and as a member. Some of the members can be the voice at the table to explain, why is it important to do a needs assessment? Why do we have to do a strategic plan? Because often we know, if you've ever worked with a group or a coalition, they come to the table and they immediately want to jump to implementation. They just want to do something, anything. So having your leadership understand why we need to take a step back and follow the steps in the strategic prevention framework is really, really important. So you're not the only voice, the staff is not the only voice at the table trying to get that message through. Coalition leadership, kind of breaking it down, coalition leadership can be shared. It shouldn't be the same people all the time. They can participate in planning and decision making. Coalition leadership can help delegate tasks. They can also help spread responsibilities and workload around to avoid burnout. They can help in sharing information, fostering trust, motivating and empowering members, and they certainly can act as role models to other coalition members as to how coalition work can and should be done. This helps ensure coalition practice cooperation, not competition. We always talk about sustainability and prevention. That's one of the things we should be talking about early and often. So early on, we need to be talking about sustainability of the coalition. How will we ensure that our coalition will continue its work? Will the coalition still be around if you were not around as a staff person? Building leadership and having a plan for succession is really important. Always be recruiting coalition members. Recognize your members. Recognize them for the good work they do. If they're burned out, move them on. If they're burned out, they may need to get off the coalition. I have a friend who jokes that she plaques them out. She plaques coalition members out. She gives them a plaque, tells them they did a wonderful job and we appreciate your work, but it's time to move on and let some new blood onto the coalition. Also, continuously integrating the coalition's goals and strategies. There are partners at the table that do the same work that we are doing in prevention that we're trying to get to come to the table, and they may not even realize that they are truly in prevention work, such as law enforcement, community policing. They're not trying to catch people doing wrong, they're trying to prevent it. So we can work with them in ways to help reduce property crimes, traffic crashes, domestic violence, many things that are at the core of substance abuse. Again, building relationships with organizations, not just individuals, is really key, and diversifying funding. Don't put all your funding in one basket. You want to make sure that you have diversified funding so that your success doesn't hinge on one grant or one funding source. I didn't talk as much about strong relationships. That was kind of a theme going through, but Jerria is going to talk about that more in her presentation. But building relationships can be one of the most important things you do, developing those in the beginning. So I'm going to turn it over to Jerria now, and she's going to talk a little bit more about her coalition specifically, where I've kind of covered the nuts and bolts of it. Jerria, you ready?
I'm ready. We're all set. Thank you, Dawn. And Dawn is going to do the slides for me. So I guess I'll just give a thumbs up when we're ready for the next slide. But again, my name is Jerria Martin, and I think Dawn began by saying that she wasn't as old as her bio made her seem. I think I can start by saying that I am as young as my bio made me seem. So I've only been doing the coalition work for about 4 years now, but it has been 4 awesome years. And I got drawn into the coalition work because in 2016, I was the first woman and the youngest to run for mayor of historic Selma, Alabama. And so after having an unsuccessful bid at mayor of historic Selma, our local district judge called on me and said, well, Jerria, we have this awesome position in mind for you. We just received a DFC grant and we'd like you to run it. And I'm thinking, wow. And he began to, to just tell me about how I would be literally, running and setting up a coalition. And I remember thinking, what in the world is a coalition? Even after agreeing, to the job. But what I learned over the 4 years that the coalition concept and a story that really resonates with what a coalition is and how we operate is the story of stone soup. And so you see our first slide on stone soup is what you bring to the pot. And so if you don't know the story of stone soup, it's a story that my mom used to tell me growing up about a village that was just out in this faraway land, and they were experiencing an extreme famine. And so there was a scarcity of food and water, and so much so that this, what was once a tight-knit community began to be a selfish community, you know. So if they had chicken, they were keeping it to themselves. If they had, you know, vegetables growing, they were keeping all of this good food, you know, to themselves. Until one day, a young lady, and we'll call her Jerria, Jerria looks out on her community, on her area, and sees that something must be done to bring back that community spirit that was once there. And so Jerria goes to her house and brings out her biggest pot. And so she brings it to the middle of the city, and she lights a fire. And as she lights the fire, she pours water in the pot, and she begins to, you know, just stir it. And after a while, people are looking at her like she's crazy. They're coming out of their huts and out of their apartments. They're just coming and making their way to the circle to see what it is that Jerria is doing. And after she has a crowd of almost half the town, she says, guys, I'm making stone soup. And so she had the coolest stone that she could find, and she took it and she put it in the pot. And while people weren't looking, she sprinkled in some spices and herbs. And so after a while, as she was stirring, it began to smell so delicious. And everybody's wondering, so what can I do to get a taste of this stone soup? And she says, well, everybody's welcome to have some. All I'm asking you to do is go to your home and bring back some of the chicken, you know, that you have stopped sharing. Bring in some of those vegetables that you are growing or that you have saved up from the last season. And so after a while, everybody brought back what they had in their homes and put it into the pot. And this pot was able to feed the rest of the community as they did this throughout the famine. And so it was all about the community to come together and bring in what they had, you know, into the pot. And then there was also a with them thrown in there, that what's in it for me. And the what's in it for me is that, hey, you get to eat some of this delicious stone soup. And so that's the story of stone soup. All right, let's keep it going. All right, so why coalitions? And so as we said before, coalitions, we start by impacting a defined community. So for my community, it would be Dallas County. And Dallas County is where Selma is located. Selma is, like they call it, the Queen City of the Black Belt. And Dallas County is about 40,000 people. And 1 in 3 of our children here are in poverty. So that's just a background on the impact in that defined area, which is Dallas County, 40,000 people. And so from that, we engage the community sectors. The community sectors are just the different parts. We'll go into there where we name those different sections in the next slide. But so we go from engaging the community sector and to addressing the conditions and settings in the community. We do that through promoting comprehensive strategies, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And all of this is to achieve what Don mentioned before, positive community outcomes. That's the goal, producing positive community outcomes. Let's keep it going. And so that can be captured in kind of Calcutt's phrase, community problems require community involvement for community solutions. And we're going to show you, or we'll pretty much demonstrate that in the next slide. So I want you guys to meet my coalition. As you see pictured there, these are a few members of our youth coalition. And this right here, which is actually my mouse pad, these are our sector representatives, plus a few more. And so we're a fun group and we've become like a family. But, you know, how did we get there? How did we build, you know, a network of, now we have our youth coalition is over 150 youth strong. We have our junior hope dealers. We call ourselves the hope dealers. This is our shirt. You can see we have it on. And so we call ourselves the Hope Dealers, and our Junior Hope Dealers, which is our youth coalition, is in every middle school and high school in Selma and Dallas County. And so it's kind of set up like an SGA. It's a youth board in each school. And we work with them to ensure that they receive the training and have all the knowledge that they need and the funds to implement our strategic planning in their schools. And so it's we've had an awesome job with them. Also with our sector representatives up under them, our Hope Dealers, we have over 250. And so we have the the base, which is the sector representatives, and then those that fall under them in those various committees, and it totals up to 250 just community partners. And so as you see, the sector representatives just kind of break down. You have 12 sectors, from everything from youth to parents, business, media, religious organizations, healthcare professionals. We work with all of them, you know, within our area to ensure that we're fulfilling our mission. And this is just a sample of what, when we go out into the community to recruit new sector representatives, what we give. This isn't the exact copy that we use, because with ours, I always try, I guess because I'm young, I try to make everything seem just cool. Like, you're missing out, you know, if you're not a part of this program, if you're not a part of this, you know, event. And so ours is actually just called the Hope Dealers roles and responsibilities. And so as we give those out, it just clearly outlines, you know, what's expected, you know, what's the time commitment, what's going to be your responsibility as a Hope Dealer. And so the cool thing about this is that we really haven't had to go out into the community to give these out. People have been coming to our office, which is our cool office that I'm at right now, you know, knocking on the door, trying to see what they have to do to become Hope Dealers, because we've just worked hard to build a wonderful reputation in our community. And so how can you build that reputation in your community? How can you work to recruit awesome sector representatives? And so with me, remember, I just got off the campaign trail. So the first thing that I did, you have to start with the relationships you already have. You know, think about it. Who's already in your circle that you can begin with, you know, looking youth, under media, under, and then so I already had connections in each, you know, mainly from the campaign trail and others through, you know, other connections. But always start though with the relationships that you already have. And what I found is that, say for example, I was friends with a school board member, and the school board member made the introduction to the superintendent. And, you know, and that was the connection that I needed to really get into the school. So remember, just always start with the relationships you have, even if that relationship isn't the end goal. Make sure they can be the one that introduce you, you know, or make that connection and introduction, you know, to that person that you're trying to attain to become a part of the, to be a sector representative. You want to build relationships before you need them, you know, so don't get comfortable and say, oh, we have our 12 representatives, you know, that's it, we're done. No, like, continue building those relationships, because each and every relationship you build, I promise you, at some point, it's going to be valuable to your coalition. And so you got to remember that you're building relationships one at a time. So it doesn't have to be a race. You don't have to. I know some coalitions that I work with the ORN only have 10 of the 12 is represented, but it's like, you know, go at your own pace. You know, don't put pressure on yourself just because you're not moving along as fast as you would like. Just remember that relationships are built one person at a time. And, you know, sometimes you can come across as distant, you know, genuine, you know, when you're just, you know, you're working to fill a number versus working to make a new friend, you know, who's going to really have a voice and seat at the table. So just remember, take your time and build relationships one person at a time. Another great thing you can do when recruiting sector representatives is have alternative participatory options. So for example, with us, while we have our 150 youth representatives and we have our 250 community representatives falling up under the sector representatives, we also gave businesses an opportunity to just be Hope partners. And so those are just our community partners. And so say, for example, they couldn't make it to our coalition meetings, but anytime we get, you know, new material, anytime we have yard sign campaigns, they've already committed saying, okay, as a community partner, I will post this sign, I will put this up, I will do whatever you need me to do. I can't make it to the meetings, but, you know, when we've received a whole bunch of in-kind donations from, again, this pool of just community partners. Even though they're not sector representatives, they're committed to be community partners. So when we need food for an event or any other resources, you know, that they can donate in kind, they're the first ones to do that. So it's okay to even have some alternative participatory options. You want to identify networking opportunities. And so, know what's going on in your community, where you can really network and get to know the who's who of your town or of your county. And most of all, you want to meet your community where they are. And that kind of goes into networking opportunities, because when you meet your community where you are, I promise you will never be the coalition that's sitting around, the meeting was supposed to start at noon and it's 12:15 and there's only 5 people there. I know a lot of us have been there. But for us, we try to meet the community where they are. So I do a lot of, in my day-to-day, and I actually have my assistant and some of our community sector representatives to actually go out and participate in the things that are going on in the community, so we get the word out by attending the health fair, or by attending a church service, or attending the fraternal organizations meeting, so we try to play a role in their events just as much as they do in ours, so it can feel like an equal give and take, and not just, oh, y'all got to come to our stuff all the time. It's kind of equal give and take. And so continue to invite people to get involved, but most of all, guys, have fun. And you can keep going, but a fun thing that we do is actually viral videos. If you guys go look us up, type in drug-free communities of Dallas County, you'll see our organization has done 3 viral drug-free videos with our community. Click it one more time, please, Nan. A few more times, actually, until it's all loaded. Okay. And this is just letting you know that, as you begin to recruit sector representatives, what you should have in mind. Think about what can they contribute, what skills, resources, tasks can they do. But at the same time, while you're wondering how they can benefit the coalition, you have to understand what's there with them. So how they will benefit from joining, and then also, who will make that contact. So again, you have to remember, if you have a sector representative or someone in your close circle that is more familiar with that person than you are, when you're considering who will contact it, and you may not be, that person to make that contact, it'll just be a lot more awesome if it's Dave that plays golf with me on Wednesdays, versus the Dave that you've seen 1 or 2 times, in passing, so always go with your sector representatives if you feel like they can make the acts better than you can, or if they have a closer relationship to that person than you. Keep it going in. Okay, so with law enforcement, the way that I began to contact law enforcement, I received the role of executive director, was our sheriff. Our local sheriff and I were pretty, good friends. And I went to him and told him all about the coalition and the vision and the mission. And most of all, I told him that it was going to be fun, because I knew he was a fun, person, that he'd have an opportunity to really work with the kids, and actually even make the law enforcement, in Selma, paint us in a better light, because, right now in the community, well, back then in 2016, it wasn't a positive, look for law enforcement then, but now we have a much more positive look. But so what Sheriff Grantham was able to do was link me in with the police chief, the then police chief, and we worked with the police chief to pull in the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency, which is our state troopers, and our state troopers, after developing a close relationship with them, were able to pull in the Alabama Law Enforcement the ABC board. And so now we have all, 5 entities working together, and we call them our HOPE enforcers. So we have the police department, the sheriff's department, the Alabama state troopers, and the Alabama ABC board, working together to help us fulfill our mission. And so that's how we're able to get in. businesses. As you heard in my bio, I am the past president, immediate past president now of our Selma Rotary Club. And so that's one way I was able to really, you know, reach out to our business heads. I was already a part of Rotary. But another thing that I was sure to do was meet with the executive director of the Chamber, you know, of Commerce. And the biggest with them, you know, that I threw out for her is that, you know, look at how many of our young people who are not employed because they're not able to pass the drug test. And, you know, and it was truth. It was fact. And I promised her that, you know, we are going to work, you know, to get this number down, that we are going to be set up in every school. And so now both the entire Rotary Club serves on our board, and also the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce. She serves in that capacity as well as one of our sector representatives for business, actually, she is. And so that's how we're able to pull her in, just really thinking about, you know, what's the fact that would really hit her in the gut, you know, and make her say, wow, you know, I really have to buy in because we can really make a change in this area. And so now with youth, I know this can be kind of difficult. I've worked with several coalitions around the nation. So it's not just an Alabama problem or Louisiana problem or Georgia problem. I've worked with several coalitions around the nation who have this problem is, you know, how do you really, you know, involve youth, and then let alone, you know, have a youth coalition, but, you know, just involve youth, you know, period, within your coalition. How do you really, you know, engage them and keep them actively, you know, a part of the coalition? And so, and then especially you have like school times. Okay, can we go after school? But usually after the busy kids, you know, are doing basketball or football or this club and that club. They have so many extracurricular activities that it's hard to get them after school. And then on weekends, you know, they're with their family doing ABC, you know. So we figured out that the best place to reach them was the school. And so that's why we set up the Junior Hope Dealers group in each school. And because we also found out that, I don't know if your schools have it, but in our schools, they have what's called a free period. And so this is like an elective period where, you know, there's no core classes going on. So it's no English, math, you know, no core classes, but only elective. So they'll just be missing out on gym or, you know, art or drama, you know, not to say that's not important. That's important, but they won't miss their core classes in order to participate in our bi-weekly Hope Dealer meetings. And so our Hope Dealer meetings happen bi-weekly within the schools. Usually at most meetings we'll have food, we'll have snacks, and all of those are donated, again, by our community partners, the ones that can't make it to the meeting, but owns a, you know, nice big grocery store, or owns Domino's Pizza, you know, will say, well, y'all know you can't make it, but, you know, send us 2 large pepperoni and some wings, but they're always, you know, ready to support our cause because they just really appreciate the work that we're doing. And so again, I would definitely encourage you to, if you are not already in the schools, to definitely try, you know, because it's just no better time to reach the kids, especially when you can get them during the free period. And that's what we found success in, getting them there during that free period bi-weekly. I think it's a few more, yeah. Okay, and so for media, now this is a crazy story. So with media, when I first started, I went to the owner of our biggest radio station here in Selma, Dallas County, and just sweet talked to him like, oh, your station is awesome. We want you to give us a good deal on commercials. I only went there for commercials, you know, because we had it in our budget that we would record a few commercials. And so he said, well, you know what, Jerria, how about this? I will give you the commercials for free as public service announcements, you know, because it's about being, you know, drug free. I appreciate the work you're doing. I will give you those commercials for free, and let's take the money that you have set aside in that budget and make your own radio show. And so today, guys, we have both the Hope Show and Junior Hope Show on the top radio stations in our area. And so when I say it's so cool, on our Hope Show, that's when we bring in our sector representatives so we've had everyone from the police chief to the sheriff, but they're coming on talking about the hopeful work that they're doing on their side. That's the WIFM. You get to come in and talk about the awesome work that you're doing on your side, but also talk about the ways that you're supporting us and that we're supporting each other, in the community, and what the community can do to help us to achieve our drug-free mission. And then we also have our Junior Hope Show, which you see down at the bottom. Our Junior Hope Show is actually ran by our Junior Hope Dealers, our youth coalition. So they come on and they get to talk about the kid, topics. What's going on in the youth community? What's going on, in their schools? What type of work are their drug-free Hope Dealers, doing in their area? And so it's been a really cool process, but we also partner with our local newspaper on several times. We've partnered with the newspaper. They're at every meeting. The editor of our local paper is a sector representative as well. And so we can always count on them when we have any event, to come and not just participate, but they cover it. And we're usually on the front of the paper. And so again, it's just all about, relationship. And sometimes you have not because you ask not. And hey, we didn't even ask for a radio show, but we got 2. And so that's pretty cool. And so sometimes you will have some struggles, and you'll have those stakeholders or those sector representatives that are hard to reach. And so for us, we found that it was the senior community. I guess because we were so young and having so much fun, but the age 65 and above, we had a hard time reaching. And so we ended up setting up what we call our senior Hope Dealers. And so this started by me visiting. We have what we call a senior center here. And it's kind of like how you would have a teen hangout spot. We have a senior center, which is actually a hangout for seniors. And, if you're 65 and above, you can come there and have a free lunch. They have pool tables, air hockey tables. They play bingo. They really go there to have a ball, and it's only for seniors. And so I went to the senior center to really meet them where they are. I didn't go to ask initially. I went to just have fun with them. I went and I played pool, and I played bingo. I got to know about their families. They love to show pictures and talk about their grandbabies. And so, I genuinely listened, and I wanted to learn more about them, and just spent that time, that day, that hour, for lunch, on my lunch break with them. And from that, the next time I came back, we gave away our coalition products, our book bags and our kind of, this is a mouse pad. We gave away stuff like this at bingo. And so by the time I even got ready to make my ask, they were asking me, how can we be Hope Dealers? And I say, I'm so glad you're asked, because we want to make you guys senior Hope Dealers. And so they're our senior advisory board, for our Hope Dealers. It's about 20 to 25 seniors that attend there on a regular basis. And we regularly work with them, on a monthly basis to do our Hope Dealers work. And so what every coalition, successful prevention coalition must use, you have to have the strategic prevention framework. This framework is literally the meat, the bread, the butter, everything to make the stone soup is found right there in the strategic prevention framework. And I'm going to walk us through how my coalition actually uses the SPIF. Let's keep going. And so when you engage in the sector representatives, remember that you can use them to recruit other sector members, as I was telling you, that, they can make that ask too, especially if they know that person better than you. They can provide data and other pertinent information. We receive tons of good stuff from our local police department, from our sheriff's department, with the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency and the ABC board, all of them, they don't hesitate to send us, the data that we need outside of the surveys, the annual surveys that we do. And it's golden. you know, because sometimes I know about drug buys and stuff that's happened that the media or really no one in the city else, you know, even knows. And so we're able to really tackle it when we know what's going on in what area of the community, because they release information to us that they don't even release to much of the public. And so it's a really cool connection to have. And most of all, your coalition representatives can be your hands and feet, you know, in the community. You know, as I said again, when we do our different campaigns, they're the hands and feet. They're out, you know, being our voice, telling everybody our mission. Actually, at our last coalition meeting, we practiced our elevator speeches, you know, so they're ready. I armed them and they're ready to go out there and deal some hope. All right. And so our hope dealers play a valuable role in each element of the strategic prevention framework. And I'll show you guys just how each slide, the next one. Oh, we skipped one. Did they go straight into capacity?
Yep.
The assessment. Okay. All right. So we'll start with building capacity, but first was assessment. I'm not sure if that slide was submitted completely, but we start with assessment. With our assessment, and as we assess the community, we depend on our hope enforcers and our sector representatives. They help give us the information that we need in order to update our community assessment, and they were the ones who gave us the information that we needed to develop a community assessment. And I spoke with Sean, and so we will have our community assessment available for everyone. So if you would like a copy of our community assessment, Sean does have that, and feel free to use it, because that definitely guides us, and it just gives us information on who our community is and what's going on, you know, in our community. So building capacity. We have here our littlest, you know, hope dealer, and, you know, even she can tell you a thing or two about, you know, what the hope dealers do, you know, who we are. So it's really important that key coalition members have a clear understanding of the coalition development process and a basic knowledge of prevention planning and concepts. And so that's why we have monthly trainings for both our youth coalitions and our just community coalition. We have trainings done by Aaliyah, by the ABC board, by our hired evaluator that we have in Birmingham. We have a cultural competency training, you know, every year. And so we're constantly, you know, giving both our youth and adults and our hope enforcers the training that they need just to stay on the popular trends and to know what's going on within the prevention world. With planning, coalitions should employ well-established planning methods, i.e. The strategic prevention framework, in order to create an effective strategic plan. And so basically what we do in planning is using the strategic prevention framework to come up with strategies, and you could come up with strategies. And the thing about these strategies is that because coalitions try to make, we push to make environmental change and community level change, you have to have strategies that both impact the individual and the environment that the individual is in. And so that's really important to remember, that and that sets us apart from other programs, you know, that a coalition is not a program. We take strategic, you know, strategies that are both individual and environmental to create a community level change within our community. And so with implementation, using our action plan, that's our structural compass, each sector plays their respective roles in implementing the strategies that help us fulfill our drug-free mission. And so I also have our action plan available, or Sean has that. And so if you'd like to see what that action plan looks like and how it breaks down who's doing what and by when, I invite you to ask him, and we get that to you so you can see what our action plan actually looks like. To assist us in our evaluation efforts, our hope dealers and hope enforcers, they participate in annual coalition surveys, in key informant interviews and focus groups, and in our listening sessions. And so these are just some of the ways that our hope dealers assist us in evaluating our county and the work that we do. And so just to review quickly, to be effective, coalitions require a shared mission and vision, high quality communication, strong relationships, both internally and externally, and targeted outcomes. All right, and I'll turn it back over to Don.
Thank you, Jerria. That was great. We loved hearing about your coalition and the Hope Dealers. We've just listed a few resources here and links that you might use if you're trying to build a coalition. These are really great. We've mentioned technical assistance a couple of times throughout the presentation, and I'll just hit real quickly. I know we're a little over on time, but technical assistance really should be provided and can be provided at every stage of coalition development, so that we're ensuring that you are creating, planning, working on your implementation, again, sustaining and institutionalizing these things. And each technical assistance can be provided on the SPIF process, the Strategic Prevention Framework process, and breaking down each of those individual steps. Here's a list of a few things. I'm not going to go over this. You'll have the PowerPoint, I believe, available to you, but we can work with you on how to form coalitions, how to recruit sectors, how to develop goals and objectives, how to develop mission statement and vision statements, how to build your capacity amongst members. Other training, very specifically training and technical assistance that we can work on, development of membership, and I've talked a lot about leadership, how you can develop leaders in your coalition, collaborative efforts, program activities, specifics of running a meeting, and working on that, meeting management, delegating and reporting, and again, finding and supporting and redefining or defining your goal as direct staff. So just know that we do have technical assistance and training available. You can contact Sean for that. And Sean, I think I'm going to turn it back over to you now.
Sounds great. Well, with an eye on the time, we don't have too many questions. We'll take those questions offline for today, just so everyone can get back to their roles. I want to thank you, Jerria. Thank you, Dawn, for a really engaging presentation today. Thank you to everyone who dialed in to join the webinar. And I suppose that I'll close just by saying we do have one more upcoming webinar for January, the Youth Engagement Coast to Coast. We're going to be going over, Jerria talked a lot about engaging, like more than 100 youth in her coalition. A lot of people find that those youths are really the people to represent how substance use directly affects them in the community. They become such powerful representatives and leaders. So we're going to be talking about two people who have had also just amazing success getting those youth engaged, getting them to be the leaders for their communities. And we'll be doing that next Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But thank you all again. Jerria, Dawn, do you have anything else to add?
That's it.
Thank you for participating with us.
Excellent. So with that, we'll end here today, and I'll be following up by email to everyone with registration links for that webinar, we've already done, and all of the documents that Jerria mentioned. So thank you, everyone.
Bye.